Hello everyone, this is Raw Input, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a cinematic Smash video. Today I'm just going to be showing you Project M, although a lot of the techniques that I use can be applied to Melee. So yeah, the first thing that you're going to need is a copy of Project M and Dolphin Emulator. I would recommend using the SD card method of setting up Project M. It's just the easiest to set up in general, and I'll link that in the description below. So first of all, let's go over some quick Dolphin settings that you will make your videos look the best. So graphics, if you go to graphics and then you go to enhancements, assuming you have a good enough computer, you're definitely going to want to turn up the internal resolution to at least whatever your monitor is displaying. So for me it's only 1080, but I'm sure plenty of you guys have 4K monitors and stuff. So just to get it to look the best, if you have a good enough computer, make sure it's turned up to your display resolution. These other options don't matter nearly as much. You can turn up anti-aliasing, but usually that doesn't really, it just makes it a lot harder to run and doesn't give that much benefit, so I tend to leave it off. And the other thing that you're going to want to do right now, I'll talk about it later, is enable a free look. This will allow camera movement, but I'll talk about that later, so make sure you enable that. And another thing, really quickly, is if you go to config and interface, you're going to want to uncheck all these boxes because these will get in the way of recording. It'll do on-screen display messages, so you definitely want to get rid of all these. And yeah, I think that's it. So anyways, going into Project M, go and just load it up. And one of the things that I've done with my specific Project M build is I've gotten rid of the HUD. You'll see it soon. Getting rid of the HUD allows you to, hold on, let me just turn off this. Getting rid of the HUD makes it a lot easier to film things without the percents and stuff getting in the way. So I would recommend that. I have a build that I made that turns off the HUD, and you can download that also in the description. So I would definitely recommend that. But going into it, so there's a few different methods I use to capture these kind of cinematic shots. The first one, the most common one that I used, was by going to verses, special verses, and then choosing slow verses, and this is going to allow you to get better slow-mo. That's why I do it. So if you're not worrying about slow-mo, you technically don't have to do this, but I would highly recommend it. So the next thing to do is to decide kind of what your footage you're going for is going to be. So for me, I used a blank player 2 that wasn't moving at all for my clips. Obviously that's probably not what everybody wants, or that's not what you're gonna want. So you can also do it, using a CPU, or if you have a person plugged into the player 2 spot, that'll work too. For all you who are very experienced in tasks, you can use tasks for this part for multiple players. I did for a few of my clips, but for right now, let's just do a CPU, and I'll just be let's just see. I'll be not Game & Watch. Let's be Yoshi. All right. So you're gonna go and start, and choose whatever stage you want. And yeah, I would recommend making a few save states just to make sure that you can get your footage, whatever you're gonna be recording, right. Because basically, right now you're just gonna record the combo or the gameplay that you want. So I'm just gonna record like a few seconds here. Really quickly, and yeah, so you can do it on a CPU or with a friend or on a blank slate. Alright, so this should be good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Go LRA start to quit out. And going to go and press Z to save the replay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Press Z to save the replay. You're going to save it to your SD card. Oh, and one quick thing I should point out. When you're, another thing, yeah, I forgot to really quick, I'm going to show it in Dolphin here. If you go to controllers, go to configure, you definitely want to not have the left analog and the right analog, the triggers. You don't want the analog values to be active when you're recording, because if you do have them active when they're recording, then it'll desync the replay. So definitely before you start recording, make sure you go in here and disable the left analog and right analog. Other than that, you can keep everything the same with your GameCube controller. So anyways, back to PM. So we save the replay. Now we're going to go find it in Vault. Okay. So here it is. Once again, I would recommend making a save state or two because you're going to be recording. It's going to take a few tries probably. So I'm going to go ahead and make a save state. So now when you're in this, when you're in the replay, one easy way to do this is you can hold L or R or press L or R, and it'll zoom in on one of the characters. And by tilting the analog stick left or right, you can zoom, kind of orbit around the character. And this is how I got plenty of my clips, just by doing this. So pretty simple.
So the other way you can mess with the camera in Dolphin is by using free look, which is what I mentioned earlier that you should turn on. So the basic way to do it is to hold shift and press WASD, and you can move the camera around to wherever you want. So basically put like a custom camera location, and this can be useful to get like really like shots that you'd never see like anywhere close like in the game or anything. By also holding the right mouse button, you can like look around with the mouse, which I think is a pretty neat feature. So by combining shift and WASD and looking around with the mouse, you can kind of get this like hand cam almost kind of view. If you zoom in on one of the characters, you can also move the camera around with free look wherever, and the camera will walk like kind of with the character because you're still zoomed in on him. So this is pretty useful also. Yeah, so that's the main other way. You can play around with this combination of like orbiting and free look to get a lot of different views. And like, you know, you can go like way up here to the top. You can go under the stage if you want. You can go really close to the character. You can go far away. So this gives you a lot of different options. Yeah, so I think next we should move on to the editing, since this is most of the camera recording techniques are done. Alright. Okay, so here we are in Sony Vegas, my preferred editing software. So what I'm going to be showing you, if you have the easiest way to do what I'm going to be showing you is if you have Sony Vegas, obviously. Premiere is another good option since it has a lot of the plugins that I'm going to be using. If you use other video editing software, you can definitely do similar things to what I'm going to be doing. There's lots of ways to do this stuff that I'm going to be doing without fancy plugins. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to show how I do it in Sony Vegas, since I don't really use any of the other video editors. So the first thing you're going to do is import some footage. So let's see here. I'll go to recordings, And I think I am just gonna use a clip from PM the movie. This Ivysaur clip should be fine. So here's what it looks like. Let me just get this a little bit better. So as you can see, it was recorded in slow motion, and that's basically what it looks like. Nothing too fancy there. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of the sound, just because I don't need it for most of the stuff that I do. You can keep it if you want, but when you do like slow-mo and stuff, it's gonna get messed up. So I'm just gonna delete the sound really quick. So the first thing should talk about is the filters that we're going to be using to color correct the footage. So I'm going to add a plugin here, and it's called Magic Bullet Looks. It's used by a lot of video game editors and stuff. It's basically just a super easy to use color correction plugin. So I click here, I click Edit Look. And you can see it gives me all these cool options that will change the colors, kind of the contrast, the colors, the focal points, and there's, at least the version I have has a ton of presets. So basically I'll just usually go through a bunch of these until I find one that looks the best. I think for PM the movie I used a cool preset. I think it was Miami Game actually. So let's just use that one. Okay, so we have our preset on here. Now you can see the whole footage is like kind of more contrasty, more colorful, vibrant. So that's a good way to get kind of a Hollywood color palette look out of your footage. Super easy too if you have the plugin. Oh yeah, and really quickly I want to mention, yeah, the plugins I'm using are all pretty much paid plugins. Yeah, if you can pay for them, great. If you don't want to pay for them, there are ways to not pay for them. I'll just say that. Yeah, so don't worry too much about that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add I'm going to add some motion blur. Actually no, I take it back. I'm going to add my camera shake next actually. So these are the Sapphire effects, the Sapphire video effects pack for After Effects, and they have a really good shake plugin, a camera shake plugin here that I use a lot. So let's go ahead and add it. And now when I play the footage, you'll see it's gonna look really shaky probably. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely not what we want. And this is definitely a plugin that you don't have to use, that if you just, a little bit goes a long way, but it's really not that big a deal. So I'm gonna go and turn the amplitude and the frequency down a bunch here. And I'm gonna go and turn the let's see, where the Z distortion here, turn it up a little bit so it's zoomed in a little bit. So now, let's see, this is probably, okay, that's better. So now it's a little bit more natural. You can it's harder to tell, and it just kind of adds that, once again, kind of hand cam, like somebody's there on the stage recording characters. Just kind of adds that realism kind of, and yeah, once again, you don't have to use that, but I use that a lot. So the last thing we're gonna do is add motion blur. Now this one's gonna be kind of hard to show because motion blur, unfortunately, the type that I'm using, Real Smart motion blur, is extremely CPU intensive, and I don't have the best CPUs, so get rid of that really quick. I don't have the best CPUs, so it could run kind of slowly, so we'll see. But the main thing with the motion blur is this blur amount box, and lower values are less motion blur, higher values are more. Typically, I tend to find that the default value 0.5 is just a bit too high, too noticeable. Let's see if I can show you guys a little bit. Unfortunately, yeah, I have to put it down to like lowest quality because my CPU can't handle it. And no, here, one thing I can do really quick to show you. I'll pre-render this, so see you in 1 sec. Okay, the clip is pre-rendered, so here's what it looks like with 0.5 motion blur on. And yeah, that actually doesn't look too bad. I thought it'd be worse, to be honest. Yeah, usually I have it like 0.4 or 0.35. Somewhere around there is usually pretty good to get a kind of subtle effect. I usually think 0.5 is too high, but honestly it looks like for this kind of footage it actually is fine for this one. So yeah, those are the main 3 effects, like plugins, that I use to alter the footage. And then I also use plenty of other kind of techniques in After Effects, like so I guess the first one is slow motion, and that's actually very important. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the motion blur here just so we can actually preview the footage. So slow motion, the best way I do it in Vegas is to go to Insert, Remove Envelope here, click Velocity, and basically what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that this center line means that you're always going at 1 times or what the normal footage speed is, and then if you drag it all the way up to the top, that's going to be going 3 times the normal speed of the footage. And if you drag it down to, well, if you drag it all the way down to the bottom, we'll be going reverse, but if you drag it down to 0% right here, that's stopped, and obviously, you know, 50% is half and 25% is a quarter. So since I recorded this footage at 60 FPS, I know that I can go down, I can have the FPS and it'll still be smooth because 30 FPS is smooth. Now some of you are probably thinking, oh, why don't you go down to 24 FPS? That'd be even slower, right? And you're right, it would be, and I've done that before, but unfortunately the footage looks, because it's not in a perfect division of 60 FPS, it gets really weird and choppy and stuff, and just doesn't look good, trust me on that. Now if you want to record footage in Dolphin at 24 FPS, you can definitely do that. That would probably look a lot better, but I don't worry about that. I just record at 60 FPS and then I will slow it down to half speed, and that gives a good slow motion effect. So right now it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see it's coming down from 100% going down to 50%, so it should look like it kind of ramps down to slow-mo here. So let's see, and it's kind of hard to tell here. I'm gonna trim it so we can get it to when the action starts. So here, so you can kind of see how it kind of ramped down to the slow-mo. Now it's going at 1/4 speed. Here, I'm just gonna add in a really quick, like, spike it up to what, 2 times the normal footage, so like normal speed, just so you guys kind of see how you can use these curves to do slow-mo. So let's see. Yeah, see, you can kind of see how it got fast in the middle like I wanted it to, and then it kind of slowed down again. So you can play with these curves and just like make peaks and valleys for when you want to get slow-mo, when you want to get fast, normal speed footage or faster. It's all up to preference. Like I said, I wouldn't go below 50% because when you go below 50%, you're going below 30 FPS, which generally doesn't look very smooth. Yeah, so that's pretty much slow-mo. One more plugin that I forgot to mention here. This is again a very optional thing that I didn't use on many of my things, but can be useful. Twixtor is a slow-mo plugin that basically interpolates the frames so that you can get slower footage than what you recorded, because it'll just guess where what the next frame is going to look like. So it'll keep it at 30 FPS even though it'll be going slower. It's kind of hard to explain. Just go look up Twixtor if you want like a, you can go look it up on Google if you want a better in-depth explanation. But the basic is it slows down your footage even further at the cost of it has to guess what the next frame is going to be when there aren't any more frames to like use. So it tends to get pretty mixed results. Like sometimes they'll look really good, sometimes they'll look really bad. I wouldn't go below 50% speed here. If you go below that, then it is almost certainly going to look extremely unnatural. But yeah, so 50% should, I'm actually not quite sure how it's going to work with the velocity curve. Let me see. As you can see, it's pretty choppy again because Twixtor takes up a lot of CPU, just like the Motion Blur does. But try out Twixtor. You can get even slower footage with that. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I guess one last thing is that you can zoom to like emphasize some parts. So like if you want it to like, here, if you want it to zoom into the end of the combo here, Vegas has an easy way of doing this, but so you can see, you can kind of have it zooming into Roy here as he's getting comboed. Obviously that doesn't look very good, but you get the kind of idea. You can play with the what's it called, digital zoom here. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Once you're done, you can export your footage with your Motion Blur on. Yeah, that's pretty much how I made most of PM the movie. I hope you guys learned some stuff. I hope I can see some cool stuff from you guys in the future using some of these techniques, and there's plenty more to do here. I think I've just scratched the surface with Dolphin and with editing and stuff. So so I'd love to see what you guys can come up with. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.